specification is not good. If you can do these things, you're doing a lot better. Moving towards catalog purchases, but you have to understand the organizational strategy if you want to try and do these things. And so here's how we're killing ourselves, guys, and I want this to be as clear as day for all of you. On one hand, purchasing is saying, give me an exact quote on these specifications. Give me an exact quote on this scope of work. Failure to adhere may result in bid disqualification, right? So we're doing this baton handoff. We're getting something that's filled with fat frequently, right? And it has nothing to do with incompetent parties. It's just that nobody's looking design for a TCO. Who's doing it? And you take that, and then we tell the supplier, this is exactly what you have to do, and don't you dare deviate, right? And then the supplier, see, I stopped reading purchasing books. I only read sales books now because I learn a lot more from the counterintelligence. And they're telling each other, we need to give purchasing exactly what they ask for. The customer is always right. You see these signs, right? It says we have 2 rules in our business. The first one is the customer is always right. The second one is C rule number 1. Isn't this true? So you have to make suppliers comfortable to say, listen, for goodness sakes, if I tell you to do something that's not smart, tell me. The customer is not always right. Okay? And so what does that mean? When I talked about conveying organizational strategy, making sure you understand it, that also means when you send out a solicitation, you have to document that same thing inside the solicitation. Is there anybody in here who likes to be micromanaged? Anybody? No? And so if your manager gives you something and says, go off and do this, and they don't tell you why they want you to do it, and then you do it, and then it goes into a black hole after you give it to them, how do you feel? You feel good about that? How much energy are you going to put into that in that process when you know it's going to go into a black hole, you don't even know why you're doing it? How much energy and zeal and enthusiasm are you going to put into it? So why do you think your suppliers are different? If you just tell them, give me these widgets, don't ask what we need them for, don't ask about our organizational strategy, and don't deviate from what we're asking for. You are turning the people who are telling each other they want to be trusted advisor into robots. Right? They want to help you. And suppliers are smart, but they're not going to tell you unless you ask. And then they say it's not our job to question demand. And so in the end, there becomes missed opportunities. You miss opportunities by following this, and you have to tell suppliers to be comfortable. And you have to harness supplier knowledge. People tell me, where can I get benchmarking information? Where can I get benchmarking information? And I want to scream from rooftops that you have the best benchmarking source for free in your own backyard with your own suppliers, because you're buying all these different things, but they're selling one. And they watch other companies, their customers, do things smarter than you and dumber than you, and they're learning from both, right? And until you ask them, you won't ever know. Suppliers are your best source of free benchmarking information. And the beauty is, most of this information does not have profit compression as an outcome, right? Remember that 20%? Get out of this mold of focusing on how to compress 20% and get into the mode of figuring out how to shrink the 80%. And I promise you your suppliers have ideas to help you do this. And so, when you put these 2 things together, when you take purchasing-driven design for TCO, when instead of taking this handoff, you go upstream, and you understand the organizational strategy, and you look for opportunities to reuse, and you look for opportunities to drive standardization and to get rid of bells and whistles and all these kind of things, and then you couple it on the other end with supplier-driven innovation. And what I'm calling innovation for you, it's innovation for you, but it's not innovation to them. They've seen it with their own eyes. This is the good kind of innovation. It's proven. I'm only calling it innovation because it's new to you. But in fact, it's proven activities. It's proven processes. Do you see the difference? Right? It's not really, it's not the bad kind of innovation. It's the good kind. When you put these 2 things together, then that's when the magic happens. And I want to be as clear as possible. This is the easiest path for you to become a hero in your department. If you're a manager or you're a leader in your organization, this is the easiest path you have to get your department to produce better TCO results, is to just start understanding organizational strategy and leveraging your suppliers as a source of knowledge. In fact, if you're sending out a solicitation, why not ask for 2 responses? Why not tell them, send me 1, which is exactly what I asked for, and 2 is what I should have asked for based on my organizational strategy? Why not make part of the supplier selection criteria include 10% for innovative ideas that help improve TCO? Why not? Do you have anything to lose by doing that? And who has to do all the legwork when you offer them the option of giving a second response? Who has to do all the work? You or them? Is this a trick question? Who has to do the work? It's them, right? People always think I'm asking trick questions. I don't know, it's something about the way I dress. I'm not sure what it is. And so now let's talk about TCO enabling technology. So please understand that I'm limited on time, so I'm going really fast, right? There's 3 components I'd like you to pay attention to. And so everything we covered happens before this technology kicks in, essentially, because we want to make sure we don't automate bad processes. We want to make sure we don't automate a process that does not involve design for TCO and does not incorporate supplier innovation. Once you've taken that fat out of the equation, then you can start leveraging tools and technology to take your organization to the next level. And so I see a few spaces here. One is you have indirect materials where you have sporadic purchases that range between 3,000 and 100,000. Suddenly you need enough chairs for this conference room that you need to buy, right? Or for this, whatever you call this hall, ballroom. Okay, it's not a long-term strategic recurring purchase, it appears. It's a sporadic purchase, and it may be a small amount, maybe a large amount. It's a great option to go the reverse auction path, okay? That's a great thing to look at. I've worked a lot with reverse auction suppliers, and it works really well because you're not looking at strategic long-term purchases. You're looking at spot buys where, you know, and the benefit is that frequently you have somebody out there who's got excess inventory on their hands they're dying to get rid of. That's what I've seen. So reverse auctions work great for that kind of need. Then you have indirect materials, which are more routine. You know you're going to need them day in and day out. They're of more of a strategic nature. In that case, you would drive towards an e-purchasing model, where you can do cataloged and so forth. Having catalog purchases, they're pre-negotiated. It's an Amazon-like purchasing environment. And in that particular case, e-purchasing works great to streamline that. I know I implemented e-purchasing at a Fortune 50 company, and it completely, within the first year, we saved 18 million, and we were able to repurpose about 25 transaction order placers to other more value-added positions. And then you have private marketplace auctions, and this works great for direct materials. And the reason I say private is you want to have pre-qualified suppliers in direct materials. You don't want to have open a wide net to anybody who wants to give you raw materials to go into your manufacturing process. That is a showstopper. And so if you can have a capability to drive private marketplace options, to have suppliers not only win, but to keep winning your business, because those prices with commodity and direct materials commodities typically fluctuate quite a bit. And so you have a need to keep going back to them and negotiating new prices. And a reverse auction platform for private marketplace auctions for pre-qualified technology suppliers is an excellent methodology to do that. All 3 of these create an audit trail. All 3 of these automate good processes if you do it right. You never want to automate a bad process. And all of them help purchasing be more efficient. And so with the reverse auctions and the sporadic purchases, you're typically looking at low supplier allegiance. If suddenly you need to buy enough chairs for this ballroom, you're not going to have a lot of allegiance to that supplier. It's as long as they can meet the specifications. E-purchasing, you'll have medium supplier allegiance. You're not usually doing it for the most strategic suppliers. And with private marketplace auctions for direct materials, you have very high supplier allegiance because they're enabling your manufacturing strategy. So it's absolutely critical. All 3 of these have their own role, and you have to view them as distinct mechanisms. And so with e-purchasing, you can absolutely streamline your processes, virtually eliminate the maverick buying, because, you know, let's face it, other organizations inside your company, HR, finance, accounting can say, starting Monday, this is how we're going to do things. Starting Monday, we're going to have this new tool. Starting Monday, you know, and failure to comply may result in written warning or termination. We don't have any of that in our profession, right? We have to beg and plead and negotiate and influence. So end users will take the path of least resistance, and if you do e-purchasing right, it becomes the path of least resistance. They would have to be crazy to go and try and find their own vendors when they could go into the tool, click, buy, and go, and move on to the rest of their job. And you slash the headcount from an administrative perspective, reduce prices, TCO, all of those are huge. With reverse auctions, what you have to be really mindful of is you have to isolate variables down to cost, because you don't want the situation happening where you made a good cost decision but a bad TCO decision. And so it has to be all the other factors, warranty, lead time, specifications, whatever it is, you have to isolate it so that you can make a price-based decision. The interesting thing I've seen with reverse auctions, and this shocks me to this day, but I've gone through the statistics for indirect materials reverse auctions, and what I see, at least with the biggest companies that I've worked with, is they net around 76% diverse supplier expenditures. And you folks are killing yourself, I assume, and getting a lot of pressure to try and do business with small businesses, right? Local businesses and underrepresented minority businesses. We're trying to do this for the community. Well, when you can cast a huge net with a reverse auction to 100,000 suppliers, there's going to be a lot of small businesses and underrepresented minorities who've got stuff they can sell for a great price. And so that statistic itself is unbelievable to me. And casting that huge net can result in really big savings because you're not pre-qualifying suppliers. You can go out to as many as there are on the planet Earth that are registered with that company. And then you have an audit trail that's better than anybody here could produce on their own. And literally we have Fortune 50 companies using the file cabinet system still today. I mean, I know that for a fact, for contracts and for negotiations and for all these kind of things, which is totally unacceptable. An internal audit comes around and that is not going to be a happy experience. It's what you'll end up doing is what some people do before they go to the semi-annual dentist visit, which you do 6 months of flossing right before you get there, right? And we don't want to do that with our file cabinet system. We prefer to have an electronic audit trail where everything is online, available and archived. And then with private marketplace auctions, this solves the problem of how to create competition with direct materials suppliers, because you cannot sit on the business. When you're buying direct materials, you have to know what's going on with market prices at the raw material level, what's going on overall with the benchmarking rates and so forth. I've seen direct material commodity managers who are negotiating on a weekly basis, renegotiating with the same suppliers on a weekly basis. I once had, well, I interact with a lot of salespeople now, and I had a salesperson tell me something I'll never forget. He said, "It's been my consistent experience that when my costs go down, purchasing has no clue, and they don't come to me, and I make a lot more money. But when my costs go up, I know, and I run to purchasing to renegotiate pricing based on market level increases." And this guy is sitting on money just because of this strategy. He has his own business. It's not a strategy, it's purchasing's lack of awareness of what's going on with market rates and knowing when you need to go back. And what this allows you to do with private marketplace auction with pre-qualified suppliers is to create a situation where suppliers not only win your business, but they have to keep on winning your business. And you can drive a multi-sourcing strategy, because you never want to be single-sourced on direct materials, right? Can everybody agree? That's your supply line for manufacturing. You have to be multi-sourced. And so the concern is, well, how do I maintain competition? You know, or how do I can get a better price with one supplier than I can with 3 or 4. Not necessarily. I have seen the data. You can pit multiple companies against each other on a constant basis to make them keep winning your business using a private marketplace auction, and everything is online. Everything's automated, and you have all the audit trail, and you're able to show who bid what and to be able to respond to those. And it doesn't need to be tied to contract negotiation cycles. So in indirect materials, you might say, okay, I'm negotiating a 1-year contract and we'll talk again at the end of 1 year, or a 2-year contract, we'll talk again at the end of 2 years. You can't do that in direct materials. It just doesn't work. And so this allows you to keep going back out of cycle, and there's nothing against the law with doing that. You can always go back and renegotiate and make it a part of the contract. And then you can allocate business based on algorithms. So I've done that with direct material suppliers, and I see it. So if you say, based on the pricing that the suppliers came back with, let's say you have 4 direct material suppliers, well, you can establish establish an algorithm that, okay, this one's going to get 60% of the business for the next 3 weeks. This one's going to get 15%, that one will get 10, or it might be more evenly distributed. You always want to keep all of them warm with some business because that's important. You want to keep all of your supply line partners warm. So I went really fast. I know I'm going to try and save a little bit of time for questions. So let me go through a couple of pages of call to action. These are the 2 slides that I want you to think about when you go back to your desk. And I'm urging you not to go back to business as usual. We did really very little today to talk about profit compression, and that was intentionally. I want you to focus on how to take costs out of the equation and how to streamline and automate your processes. So the first thing is you have to really, really dive deep into your end user's organizational strategy and make sure you get it and you understand how is the procurement of these goods and services going to enable this organization. And by the way, if you ask me what's the biggest problem with purchasing today, you want me to tell you what it is? The biggest problem with purchasing today is we're buying goods and services instead of performance results. We're sending out solicitations for goods and services, we're selecting for goods and services, we're contracting for goods and services, and then we magically expect performance results. It's not going to happen, folks. And so the whole process has to be re-architected for the acquisition of performance results. So once you understand the organization's strategy and their key performance indicators, then you have to architect a process for the solicitation of performance results. And you do that by driving upstream design for TCO with the objective in mind of, I'll only make changes that reduce total cost that still enable those performance results. Then the next thing is to leverage the free benchmarking information you have in your own backyard. Prepare to be amazed at the type of feedback you get. Prepare to be surprised at the type of feedback you get of what are simple things you can do to reduce cost without impacting your supplier's profitability. And they're going to love you for that discussion because it doesn't impact them and it helps them help you. They want to be your trusted advisor, so let them do it.